Viv Allinson
Thank you.
from Maroba.
Yes.
CEO. I'll say sometimes past swearer, never smoker, ex-nurse. I have some affinity.
Well, I'm still a nurse. I won't give that up.
That's good.
You can change the title, but you can't knock the nurse out of the girl.
Indeed, I've heard that. I've heard that. Let's talk about your path to get to CEO. It's a really interesting one. Where young ladies today talk about glass ceilings, you had matrons on top of you, which were solid iron.
Yes.
How did you get through that?
I guess there was a naivety there and an enthusiasm and a passion for doing the right thing and what was right and representing people. Through my junior years as a nurse, I always found myself in a position of representing my peers, and that just seemed to drive me in terms of getting the best for people, not just for our patients that we cared for, but to try and iron out some of the injustice that was going on in workplaces and in nursing, where we were always seen as the handmaidens and we just were there to do as we were told, no matter the circumstances.
We talked about heavy lifting and lifting devices when you started.
Yes.
You were a lifting
We
device.
were the lifter. Yeah, we were the cranes. And if somebody was a little bit too heavy, we got to call a surgical dresser. But otherwise, it was 17, 18, 19-year-old young women that were doing all that lifting. And we see today that it's not been that long that women can be brickies labourers. But we were brickies labourers back then in the 70s and 80s because there were no lifting machines. We did it all.
And early on, you decided you were going to be a director of
Yes.
nursing.
Given the physically hard work of nursing, I identified that, the way we were treated and how vulnerable our backs were, and I had an injury, and I could see that I couldn't continue doing that heavy work into my 40s and 50s. I just thought I won't last the distance. So I made a decision. I had a dream, I guess. You could say that in my teens I wanted to be a director of nursing because I believed not only that I was physically vulnerable if I didn't change what I was doing, but I also believed I could make a difference. And that was the key for me. If I ever stop believing that I can make a difference, I will pack up and go home and play marbles.
Or do some more study, because in committing to being a director of nursing by 35, which you're just past now,
Yes.
you've done study?
Yes, I did the Diploma in Nursing Administration back in the 80s, and that was a great program. And I was never academic. I left school in 5th form. I failed English, Maths and Science, and I talked my way into nursing because back then that was the first year you had to have a high school certificate, which I didn't have because I didn't want to stay at school. All I wanted to be all my life was to be a nurse, and I just couldn't wait to get there. So for me to have accomplished a Diploma in Nursing Administration was a great milestone for me at an academic level, because I just never saw myself as being academically fit. And then as years went by, I was able to do the Master of Health Services Management, and again I surprised myself with my academic performance. I was high distinctions throughout that program, and I just thought, gee, where was all that when I was at school and couldn't do anything?
When your heart's there, your mind follows.
That's right, yes, that's right, yes.
Let's talk about CEO of Maroba. It's not a natural progression, business following nursing?
Yes, it was, I'd been at Maroba as the Director of Nursing, and there was, I was getting a little bit bored, and I was thinking, can I really add much more value here? And I was offered the position of Executive Director of Nursing. I thought, oh, okay, that's great. So I oversaw another facility as well as there's the nursing home. And then a couple of years later, I was invited to be Maroba's first CEO. And I actually said to the board, look, I think you should get someone that can add up and someone that can spell, because I don't do either of those very well. And they said to me that Maroba's strength was its care. and that I'd overseen that and others before me, and that they wanted that to continue. So there I was the CEO, and I didn't know how to be a businesswoman. So I made a decision that I was going to make it my business to learn how to be a good CEO.
So making that leap, is there a leap or is it a progression from?
I think it is a leap. It's sort of a natural leap, because all the years of nursing and dealing with people and difficulties and trying to manage budgets does actually prepare you in many ways to be a CEO. Because the CEO really is the figurehead of the organisation that is going to lead it in the direction it should go. And I encourage my nursing colleagues who are at Director of Nursing level that they should be looking for the next step. Don't see themselves as they're at their peak, they're at their top of their game, because there's so much more for them to do, because of the experience of being a nurse really does equip you to make a difference at the very top of the organisation.
Can I come back to Morova's, vision is for care. How hard is that? How difficult is it to care when federally funding is held static or declining?
It's very difficult, because as a carer, as a nurse and as a CEO, you have great aspirations, not just for the success of your organisation, but for the success of the people that work in it. And for people to experience success, they need to feel something good about what they're doing. And my staff regularly, when we survey them, their biggest grief is they don't get enough time to spend with residents. Now that is fabulous news. Now they should be saying we don't get paid enough. They should be saying that the work is too physically hard, because it's all of those things. And yet, because they're caring people, they say we don't get enough time to spend with residents. But the bad news is, under this package that the government's announced, $36 billion of program of reform, only $500 million is new money. So guess where they're pulling the money from? Out of the existing system, out of existing programs. And that is devastating to aged care workers across the board and to aged care leaders, because we've got to try and get more efficiency and more productivity from a situation where it's already stressed and under pressure. And we can see that our residents are much frailer than they were 10 years ago when they come to us. The world is living longer, and that's no different in aged care. And in that frailty, the government seems to think we're just duping the government, claiming too much money for this care, when in fact we're just claiming what is justly should justly be available to those frail older people. When you think about what the hospital up the road gets per day, and it's hundreds of dollars, $400, $500, $600 a day to care for somebody that we read in the paper. They don't feed them their meals because nobody's got time, so people are dying of starvation in hospitals. They don't really get showered. They get put in the shower room and they have to shower themselves. If you go into a public hospital, and most of them, you'll find that they're not being adequately cleaned. And yet, for about $160 a day at the top of our subsidies, we do all that we do. And everyone gets fed. And
no one gets left.
Nobody gets left. Yeah. They might be waiting a bit longer, but nobody gets left.
Why is the gap there? Because your work is relentless. And ideally these frail people live for many more years with limited funding.
Yes, and I think it's the dedication of individuals that keep the whole aged care system. It's not the commitment of government. The government will use a lot of rhetoric about living longer, living better. Well, that is just a laugh because they're not making it better. Governments keep raising the bar on you should expect big lounge rooms, big this, buses, outings, this, that, the other. Then they layer on top of it the accreditation system that is so demanding in our resources to meet and tick those boxes.
Should you guys be lobbying harder
Yes, we should be. Now, in Aged Community Services Australia, we've got a new CEO who's leading that charge and has been in Canberra and setting up an office in Canberra as we speak, so that right there, Johnny on the spot, to be lobbying constantly. I'm going with a delegation of aged care leaders in August to Canberra to spend a whole day lobbying governments. But we constantly need to do more, and I always have the view that we play too nice, and I think it's time that we stop playing nice.
I agree totally. We talked earlier, I think off camera, about whether they're taking advantage or whether they're just plain abusing you.
And I think they are abusing us. They keep putting out negative press about that we're just wicked, we'll rob people's bonds, we'll rob the government and overclaim, we'll do this, we'll do that. But we are looking after the community's most vulnerable people that cannot physically look after themselves or cannot mentally look after themselves. These people are so vulnerable that at Maroba, we've fulfilled a dream to build an environment for them to be cared for in magnificent surroundings, and then try to match the staff to that in hours and care needs, but we're struggling to do it. It's unreasonable to ask of us what is asked of us, and then given the pittance that we're given, and then leave the public to think that somehow we're ripping everybody off. You know, aged care providers, for the most part, for the majority, are doing a fabulous job. They have fabulous people working in them, great carers, qualified and unqualified, and yet are constantly abused in the press by the government and others. I have to say, people get on that bandwagon and say you're just all bad. And
so what? I was going to say nurses can only take so much. That's not true. Nurses take an awful lot, and your passion is still there. Yeah. What does Viv Allenson do after this? You know, do you want to see this place grow, Maroba grow?
Yes. Speaking of dreaming, you know, one of my passions is dreaming. In fact, we've just written it into our values for staff to dare to dream, that if you can dream it, you can do it. And for 12 years I dreamt the Manor, the high care facility for Maroba, because I'd been a nurse. I knew what it's like working in confined spaces and difficult areas and not having the right equipment. And I've dreamed again, and we've had passed by the JRPP a 7-storey self-care apartment development on our Waratah site. We want to grow. We want to be able to bring people in so that they can age in place, that they can be right next door to care when they need it, so that we provide a secure and sustainable environment for them. Then we're landlocked. But it's not just about buildings, it's not just about bricks and mortar, it's about what value can we continue to add to our community. Since I started at Maroba, I've been given opportunity for people asking would I mentor them. And that is a great privilege, to mentor others, to see them come into their leadership opportunities. And we've got some great prospective and aspiring leaders in the Hunter. And Maroba has for many years, and it's part of our values, to build into the whole, to add value to the whole of the community. And we want to continue to do that. So even if we're landlocked, we want to keep growing people and releasing people.
And it's not just into the healthcare area.
Exactly. It can be in financial areas, it can be in construction, building, all sorts of different areas.
It's an interesting thing because we talked about networking, and you strike me as a person who doesn't necessarily want to sit down with other CEOs of healthcare.
No, not necessarily, because over many years I've seen many CEOs come and go, and I haven't always been inspired by them. And when I was asked to be a CEO, I realised quickly I had to learn to be a businesswoman. So I joined the Hunter Business Chamber, which was a great step because I got to move in circles of people that were doing business very well, that were successful leaders in their fields. And it was great to be able to spend time with those people and just glean some wisdom from them from time to time, and to see that there's another way. So 2 things have been important for me since I've been at Maroba that stick in my mind is dare to dream and dare to be different. And we've always done that, it's been different to everybody else. People will walk into our facility and say, there's something different here. And we say, yeah, we know, but we can't quite put our finger on it. We don't know what it is.
It's care, that's what it is.
Yes.
And yeah.
But they feel it in the build. They walk into the foyer. It's not like they're participating in the care or receiving care. They're just in the foyer. They've just got out of their car for the first time and walked into Maroubra. But that has been our goal. Many years ago, probably 16, I was thinking about this last night, 16 years ago, a little old lady, she was the first woman to be appointed an inspector of schools. And she was in her 90s when I met her, and she used to come to Maroubra, knock on my door, and the glass panel in the door, she was so short I couldn't see her. And she'd bring her mate, who was another teaching colleague, and she wanted to meet my deputy. And she would come every week with chocolate biscuits, and I would provide the tea, and we would sit in my office and we would talk things over. And she had a vision for retired single school teachers to come and live at Maroubra. And she set something going there. And after a little while, she came to me and she gave me a card with the chocolate biscuits, and it had on the front 4 Dalmatian dogs, and one of them had coloured spots and glasses, and it said, "Dare to be different." I framed that. It still sits next to my desk today, because I believe that's what we are, and that's what we should dare to be, is different to the rest of the pack. And that has been Maroubra's success factor.
Absolutely. By
being different. And even though what we do sometimes is risky, we're daring to be different.
So where's the threats? What do you see as is it back to government?
Yes, the threats are around legislation and funding, that they so tightly control what we can do. There aren't too many businesses in Australia where you aren't allowed to charge what it costs you to deliver a service, and yet that's constantly expected of us. Now, can you imagine running your business and going out every day to speak to clients and knowing in the back of your mind you can't charge what it costs to deliver the service, let alone make a profit?
Sometimes I feel that, but not on a daily basis, not for the rest of my life, I hope.
Yes, yeah, and the legislation is so tight around that, and it's going to get worse. So instead of less red tape, there's going to be more red tape, because we're perceived as the enemy. Aged care providers are perceived as these wicked people because 1 or 2 ran off with the bonds. That means the rest of us must be bad, and we all pay for that. But in the end, at the end of the day, the government says, "Oh, we'll make residents and care recipients and their families feel more secure because we've got you tied up in knots." Well, guess what? People are stopping. They've put a hold on the new developments. It's going to crush the economy of aged care because people aren't going to add and grow. Because they can't make any money, and I believe every business, whether it's charitable or not, deserves and should be allowed to make a surplus so that they can continue to grow and invest and reinvest and grow their people and all of those things. But these reforms are just going to crush that. Even the banks are coming out and saying, yeah, we're not going to fund that project. Valuers are coming out and saying, your business, we're going to wind down the value of your business because of the restrictive practices the government's going to put on you. You won't get the cash flow. You're a risk now. And yet, we're looking after the vulnerable.
Viv, you're talking about momentum, and now is a time we should be investing, because we will not have the volume of people in the workforce earning the money that they're currently earning. Again, you know, we're once in a lifetime, once in a business cycle, we're seeing people there that we should be getting, in terms of tax dollars or whatever, more money off. When will this finish, and what will that impact be?
Well, as the population ages and there's this ballooning of people going to be requiring care and services, what's available will not match the demand. People will be left in their homes unattended and uncared for. That is the bottom line, unless something dramatically changes. So even in the business sector, there is opportunity abounding, given that 1 in 4 workers in Australia by 2050, it could be earlier, I forget the date, will be a health or an aged care worker. Now that is a dramatic turnaround. in the workforce economy. And so that should tell business, look, how can we get on board in this sector? How can we do something more in this area to prepare our community for this ballooning of the aged care need and demand? And in terms of funding, as the funding gets tighter and we have less resources, the care is going to be just bare minimum. It will barely scratch the surface. Or those that will get in care, it'll be, you know, who you know, how do we get into a place, you know, because the waiting list will be so long. Because even though everyone has this beautiful aspiration to live in their home, live out their days in their home, guess what? There aren't enough workers now. If you've got people spread out all over the suburb, how are you going to split one person to care for 8 people in one day when that one person's struggling to care for 8 people in one building? It just, the numbers don't add up. We've got, what are our unemployment numbers here in the Hunter? They are the lowest in the nation. And yet, where do they think all these extra workers are going to come from? Are the miners going to leave the mines and put on a skirt and come and be nurses?
There's an image, but we did talk about your aged care workers at the very entry level being paid less than checkout chicks and things like that. The whole thing needs to be reviewed.
And yet the government will say, oh well, you know, you've got enough money because you've been ripping the government off with your claims, so you can pay your nurses more.
We go back to that.
Well, it's just a lie.
We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And we'll stay in touch and push that barrow if we can for you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.